Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Board Gaming Doctor. My name is Phil, and I'll be your board game doctor today. This is going to be a quick review of Altay, Dawn of Civilization. This is a Paolo Mori game that came out last year, and as you can see, it's an alpha on Board Game Arena. So, this game is a deck building and area control type of game. And what you do is as in most deck builders, you will have your hand of cards that you use to gain resources. Some of them have special powers as well. And you have a static market of cards, each with their own costs, that you can purchase from to add to your deck. And then there are also achievements that you can buy as well. You can start to develop them once you have at least one of these resources on to put to your tableau. And as soon as you finish the costs for each achievement that you have, you can then use it for its ability. And most everyone gives you a village that you can place onto your central board. On the board itself, it's an area control type of game where you expand the villages that you have on the board out towards other places, whether they are at these neutral locations that you have to combat and win over with the warrior cards and similar effects. But you can also take and battle against other opponents. And after someone has placed all of their villages onto the board, then the game ends, and whoever has the most points, whether they have been gathered throughout the game, as well as majorities on the shared board, whoever has that is declared the winner. So to go on to some board game comparisons here, the first one that I thought of was Age of Civilization. I think both games share the civilization theme as well as the quickness in play. I feel like Altay is a relatively quick game that you can bust out. It's probably a little bit longer than Age of Civilization, but I really enjoy how things are pared down and abstracted in a way that make the sense of antiquity and civilization feel alive in and of itself. It doesn't have to be an epic experience like Mosaic or Sid Meier's Civilization, etc., through the ages, right? It can produce a civilization type of game with some elements of a Civ game, such as with Altay, the way that you build up your own technologies. And for example, the kind of static market that you have of different, I guess, tech choices, right? It's a tech tree in disguise where you can choose in which direction you pursue, which cards you add to your deck, and cycle through as well. Age of Civilization is very similar, where everyone gets a tech board that you can progress through over a short amount of time. And so both games really offer the technology tracks or trees that you often find in Civ games, as well as asymmetric powers to make you feel like you have your own type of culture and civilization, all in a short amount of time. So the mechanisms are different, but the feeling and the setting and the abstraction that is distilled in both games for a civilization theme really comes through in both games. Now, another game that reminded me of Altay was Mystic Vale, actually. I was thinking more about Mystic Vale recently, I've been cleaning out the collection, and this is one that we still have. And Mystic Vale, I feel like, produces a similar vibe compared to Altay, once again drawing back to the deck building aspect with a sort of static market, right? I know in Mystic Vale you do get the opportunity to cycle through some cards as you buy them, but especially with the base game, it does feel like you are crafting a certain type of strategy with how the market is evolving in Mystic Vale versus in Altay, how everyone else is responding to the management of the board, the central board itself, where villages are placed, as well as what kind of achievements, those bigger technologies that you're trying to pursue, what those are, right? And so those will ultimately guide your decisions towards what production type of cards you want to pursue early on, as well as some other ones down the road. I feel like there are two types, or at least two levels of different good cards, quote unquote. In Altay, you have cards that produce more iron or more stone, culture, and then some of those more advanced resource cards with more abilities and resources as well. But the market of achievements will be different from game to game, and they come out in different orders, right? And so, to me, I feel like the pursuit of how you want to tailor your deck felt pretty similar to Mystic Vale, and I suppose you can kind of substitute any mid-weight deck builder here, like Dominion, Clank, etc. But Mystic Vale, I feel like, had that similar focus, right? Without the card crafting aspect that you would see that is unique to Mystic Vale, of course, compared to Altay, but I think the pursuit strategically when it comes to deck building is about the same. So I went through the comments on Board Game Geek, and I found that some people really enjoyed how slick and streamlined this game feels. You truly can play a civilization type game in a short amount of time, right? And so similar things to the effect of how quick and fun Age of Civilization, for example, can be. This kind of gives you similar vibes, especially if you enjoy deck building. But there were and I should mention that there were a lot of people that compared this to games like Small World, which is another game that I own and forgot to mention too. So very similar in terms of how the central board and the mechanisms develop, and as you try to expand using deck building to do so, it kind of feels like that. Now, unfortunately, there are some things that people found to be negative about this game. One is the very static nature of this market. For some, it's totally fine, to know what kind of options you have in this game. But to others, especially since this game isn't as deep or complex as another Civilization or any other type of game might be, the options that you have to see, the element of discovery, is limited because of the limited nature of the action cards that you can draft from. The same could be said about the achievement cards, but I think there is more variety there, especially with the wonders. There are more to choose from and could potentially offer different choices and goals to pursue from game to game. But a lot of people did not feel like this was enough variety for them. Another interesting thing about this game is, at least with the physical copy, there was a promo that was released after the fact or around the same time that allows you to interact with the water. And so that will allow you to, I think, build ships or at least have you be able to traverse the water areas to go onto the islands, as well as travel across the land to be able to build buildings, or in this case settlements, elsewhere, rather than just going from picking one spot at the beginning of the game and exploring from there. So the fact that that was quote unquote hidden behind a promo is upsetting to some, especially if you purchased the physical version and did not have access to that. Like right now, maybe after the fact that's not available. I haven't checked, but I can see that being pretty frustrating. And so in all, some people didn't enjoy, how abstracted this game is, how quick it is. It's using the same mechanisms that and doesn't offer anything unique, essentially. So if I am to be honest, when looking at the comments on Board Game Geek, a lot of them were pretty middling. This game falls somewhere in the, with comments, I should say, somewhere in the 5 to 7 range, right? So take that for what you will. So my rating of this game after a handful of plays is a 7.2 out of 10. I am intrigued by this game. I think this game is pretty quick to learn and play and understand because it utilizes a lot of familiar mechanisms. I am a little deterred based off of the limited amount of variety that this game has. I think I'm okay with the fact that this game has a static market of cards that you can choose from. I think for this game to work, it would be necessary for you to have a limited amount of action cards to produce goods with, right? And so you can really tailor your experience to fit what you're trying to accomplish. I did fail to mention that this game has 4 asymmetric factions. They're asymmetric in the way that your starting deck is different. Some civilizations offer more warrior cards so you can battle more. Some of them offer more food, etc. And so I think using that, or how everyone is reacting to their own hands and to the board, in addition to what kinds of achievements and wonders you choose, the level 3 achievements here are wonders. that might affect how you build your deck, regardless of your starting civilization. However, yeah, I feel like some of the upgraded cards might have been a little different and added more flavor if they were different to me. I think it is nice having some variety in the achievements and wonders, but ultimately, they are just a few cards, I guess, very much in a Splendor type fashion, right? Where the choices are pretty limited to what you could try to achieve and pursue. And so this doesn't really offer so many choices, and for some that is great. It's a very contained experience that you can really wrap your head around if you're trying to play this game pretty quick. It's probably fairly easy to master. It wouldn't take a lot of repetition to do so, but it would have been nice to see this game expanded with more content, perhaps in the base. And there is room for expansion, of course, with more cards to do so in the future if necessary. But as it is, I think it's okay, right? It doesn't spark the same type of variety that I would see in a game like Age of Civilization, where there are so many different civilization cards in that game, and the ability to just tweak the technology boards a little bit on top of that wide variety that you have in cards makes that game feel pretty unique every time you play, and that's my personal opinion. I don't think Altay reaches that same variety that really sparks my interest, but very much like Age of Civilization, I do appreciate the streamlined and condensed nature of this Civ game to be able to play this quickly and to understand it quickly and to perhaps teach it to other folks who maybe know what deck building is but haven't played a game with area control or vice versa, right? And so it's a very approachable game, but maybe not one that is necessarily interesting on multiple plays. But that's yet to be said because I do quite enjoy. I think this is a fun game, and perhaps my fun will increase as I play this more. But I don't know. I would have to do so. I can't predict that as of yet, just off of my first handful of plays. This is one of the games that I was most interested in from last year, I believe, and so I'm very fortunate and grateful to have played this on Board Game Arena, of which the implementation is pretty sound as well. So hopefully this game is fine-tuned enough to be able to be on beta version for everyone to try out very soon. And so if you're waiting for that, hopefully it does happen soon. But if not, if you can play alpha games, then go ahead and feel free to try this and experience this for yourself and see if this is a game that is up your alley. And I would say if you do enjoy smaller condensed versions of games with familiar mechanisms like Age of Civilization, Small World, Mystic Vale, some of the games that I've mentioned before, then this might be something that you should try. So thank you for consulting with me today on Altay, Dawn of Civilization, and I hope that you schedule an appointment with me real soon. Take care.